Hi all, welcome all of you to the session on how to fill the DAF. Today we will be discussing about the do's and don'ts associated with on filling your DAF. After your mains examination, most of you have been in a very relaxed mode, right? But right now, we should accelerate our preparation, focusing on your personality test. And with respect to personality test, the most key element is nothing other than your detailed application for or DAF. So, what all things that you should be careful about while you are preparing your DAF? How should be your service allocation should be? How should be your cadre allocation should be? That would be the focus area of today's session. Now, let's see what do you mean by the personality test. UPC has stopped calling the interview as interview itself, and rather we call it as the personality test. In personality test, this is identified as the most crucial phase of your UPC preparation. Your personality is being reviewed along with your knowledge, your subject knowledge. More important is actually given to the personality itself. And here, the board actually tries to identify the quality, ability, and the capacity of the student to be an ideal officer. So, how do UPC evaluate a candidate? Who is better than UPC itself to tell us how they evaluate? UPC has actually identified what all they are expecting from a candidate in the UPC service, the civil service examination rules itself. Quoting from the civil service examination rules, it talks about the interview test or the personality test. Let's see. Now, a detailed analysis is given, right? Let's break down each and see what UPC is actually focusing on us. So, in front of the board, there will be a record of each and every candidate. And that record is nothing other than the detailed application form. Then, what else is asked? He will be enquired or he will be asked questions on matters of general interest. So, matters of general interest can be anything in and around him. And what is being actually done? So, they are actually trying to assess whether this particular person has the ability or has the capacity for a career in public service or in civil service. Then, what are they judging? They are trying to judge the mental caliber of the candidate. And they are not only looking into his intellectual capacity, but also his social traits as well as his interest in current affairs. Then, what are the different qualities that is being identified? So they try to see whether he has proper mental alertness, then whether he has critical powers of assimilation, whether he has clear and logical exposition, whether he could actually express himself in the most efficient, most logical manner, whether he has a balance of judgment when it comes to different prospects or when it comes to different ideas, then how much variety and how much depth he has on his different ideas in and around him. Then his social cohesion, his leadership qualities, and also his intellectual and moral integrity is being evaluated by the board. Now, how they do it? We have seen many mock interviews where the candidate is continuously grilled. So, whether the actual UPC interview also is being done in a grilling mode? See, in fact, UPC interviews are more or less in a conversation mode. And that itself is what UPC also says. UPC says that it is not of a strict cross-examination. Moreover, it is a directed and purposive conversation. It is through the conversation the candidates are kept at ease. And once the candidate is kept at ease, he will actually come out his real colors. And that is what the board is also looking into. And what are they trying to test? They are trying not to test their specialized knowledge on any particular subject because that is already being judged in the mains examination. But they are actually trying to see whether the candidate is actually having an intelligent interest in things around him. That is associated with his state, that is associated with his country, that is associated with the place of his birth or his district, etc. So, whether the candidate is having an intelligent interest in things around him, in his place, in his state, in his country, etc. So that is what UPC is trying to understand. And also UPC wants to know whether he has interest in modern currents of thought and new discoveries that the youth are following or focusing. So that is what actually UPSC is trying to understand. Now, since you got an idea about what UPSC is actually trying to evaluate, that it is your personality, your mental capacity for being an administrator rather than your knowledge. So let us now understand the marking system associated with the personality test. For that, I have done a small analysis of what has actually happened in 2019. In 2019 mains examination, for the written examination, the highest mark for the written was 914. That comes around 52%. The average mark was in the range of 44%. Okay. So the highest mark a candidate could achieve in written was in the range of 52%. And what about the interview? When it comes to the interview, the highest mark was 212. That means a candidate could score in the range of 77%. You see the importance? While in mains, the maximum you could score was in the range of 50. The scoring potential is much high for the interview. The lowest mark was 110 and the average mark was in the range of 172. So the average mark or the percentage itself is much higher than the average, the maximum mark that you could actually score in the written examination. So obviously, this time or this is the period you have to focus on your mains preparation. Okay, so what is the best way to start the mains preparation? Obviously, your detailed application form. Let's see what is there or what are the importance of DAF. DAF is actually a record of your career itself. That is what UPSC is expecting out of the DAF. You will be providing your personal information, your educational information, your parental information, your interests, your hobbies, your achievements, your interest in sports, etc. All this will actually be provided in the detailed application form. So therefore, an exhaustive preparation of DAF is mandatory for a student to ace an interview. Many people normally say that, okay, my interview was exhaustively on the DAF. Some even say that there was not a single question on DAF. But the probability of asking questions from DAF is much higher. Therefore, we should be ready by preparing exhaustively from DAF. And more or less, your personality test will be anchored on the DAF itself. Now, let's see. As I told earlier, these are the components. See, rather than telling the components, let's see one DAF itself. In 2019, UPSC had 2 DAF. I mean, for every civil service aspirant, before the interview itself, they have actually, before the mains examination, they prepared, they were asked to submit DAF 1. And after the results came, or the shortlisted candidate for interview, they were asked to submit the DAF 2. So DAF 1 contained some of the basic information, and DAF 2 contained the information regarding your personality, especially with respect to your achievements, your hobbies, etc., along with the service preference and the cadre preference. Now, we will see both the DAFs. This year, I probably believe that UPSC will have only one DAF, since once the results are out now, UPSC will be asking the students to fill one DAF, so that UPSC will only be trying to go through the DAF of the students who have actually been cleared for the personality test. Now, let's see the first DAF. Okay, this DAF belongs to one of my students who secured 206 marks in last year UPSC examination, and she was the topper from her state. Let's see. So, the name, roll number, email ID, mobile number, etc. would be given, your date of birth, then your address, your permanent address, etc. would be provided. So, okay, there is something that I would like to tell you people over here. See, the address of correspondence. Okay. See, now most of the correspondence or the communications are done through email. So, this particular address of correspondence to which the communication is to be sent, and if you people are staying in Delhi, rented accommodation, most of you will be trying to put the address of your landlord or the hostel in which you are staying and all. The problem actually happens is that then here you will be providing your address in Delhi or the place where you are actually preparing for the examination, and here you will be putting your permanent postal address. The problem is that in the DAF now you have 2 states and you will be asked to prepare on the both. So rather than, it would be ideal if you put both the corresponding or the communication address as well as the permanent address are same, because nothing is going to happen, because last year also we have asked many students to put both the correspondence address as well as the permanent postal address are the same, because that actually narrow down your preparation effort. Now, let's see what else would be there. So it will ask about the gender, the marital status, the citizenship. Okay. Now, they will be asking about the place of birth. So the place of birth for her, she was born in Tiruvalla in Pathanamthitta. Why it is important? Because other than the DAF, there is something else known as the summary sheet. So summary sheet is something that UPSC used to have before last year itself. And in the summary sheet, some of the most important information with respect to your DAF will be provided. And it is believed that all the members other than the chairman will obviously be having the summary sheet, and your entire DAF would be available over there. And most of the time, they ask questions from your summary sheet. The problem in the summary sheet, not the problem, something that you need to be taken care, is that fact that after your name, your date of birth, etc., your place of birth is actually provided. Many of you might have born in some place, and you might be living in some other place, and the place of birth you will be giving less importance because you have just born there. In my case, I have born in one small town near to my mother's place, but I have been staying in my father's place for the last long years. So my entire address was based on my father's place where I have been staying. But in actual interview when I went, they started asking question about my place of birth, which I haven't prepared well in my first attempt. So then I started thinking, why they were asking from my place of birth? Because that is given in the summary sheet. That is something that I haven't given due importance while I was preparing for the first time. Now, make sure that you are properly studying, understanding about the place of birth. Okay. Now, moving ahead. So, here these are all basic informations, and there is nothing, nothing very specific that needs attention. Okay, so here you will be providing your optional subject. Okay. And okay, now you will be providing your information with respect to your parents. Parental information will be provided. You will be giving their name, their profession, their income, their address, etc. See, here you are actually providing information with respect to your parental profession. That means your father's profession, your mother's profession, etc. See, as they expect you to have an intelligent interest on things around you, obviously the board might ask some questions with respect to your parental profession also, because as a son or as a daughter, you should know where your father is working, on what area he is working, or where your mother is working, on what area she is working. So you should have an understanding about your parental profession also. Okay. Now, this doesn't have any more it also has information with respect to whether you have studied in any foreign university. She has studied her MS over there, so that information is there. Then other than that, we are supposed to put our educational qualification from 10th, 12th and the graduation. See, when it comes to the 10th, okay, you need to provide the class, then the percentage of the marks need to be provided, then the year of passing, then make sure you are providing all the subjects that you have studied in your 10th. Okay, give the name of your school, and again when it comes to the 12th, you give all the name of the subjects that you have studied in your 12th. But when it comes to your graduation, for example, in electrical engineering and all, you might have studied a lot of subjects. You might have studied some other engineering or medicine or any other degree courses where you have studied plenty of subjects. So rather than putting all the subjects over there, you just provide the name. For example, I did my graduation in civil engineering, so I just put civil engineering over there. Okay, if you have put your honors in history or political science, etc., you just put it over there rather than identifying each subject over there. That would be the best thing to do. Then it will be asking a question, have you ever been employed? And we need to provide information with respect to employment also. Now, this is one crucial element that I would like your attention to. UPSC ideally don't want somebody who has been preparing a long period and who hasn't used his time productively. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be employed always. Okay, I will tell you why or what is the importance of this particular session. If you have a break of 3 years, up to 3 years, that is fine, because this is one of the most serious and one of the most strenuous examination that the India could see, and you have been preparing it for some time. So you have taken 2 or 3 times, that is fine. But if your break is more than 3 years, ideally, you should see that your time has been productively used. That means you have to put some or other work that you have been done. It could be any ad hoc job, any temporary job, it's fine. For example, many of you or experienced aspirants might be working with some institute. You might be correcting some copies and all, answer sheets and all. You might be working for some content creation for some institutes. Some of you might have actually done some internship during your college days and all. Whatever that you have done with respect to internship or your temporary assignments or temporary work, etc., put it over here. Now identify it as temporary. Now whether it's permanent or temporary or ad hoc, you can actually identify it as temporary. Okay, put something over there. And at least, suppose you are part of your family business, you are taking care of some activities of your family business, you can put it over there as temporary. See, the point is that rather than keeping it blank, write something over there in which you have been associated with. But don't try to bluff. Bluffing or writing something that you are not being part of it, they will easily identify it. Okay, they will ask some questions with respect to that. So, whatever you are putting it over here, you have to make sure that you need to defend yourself. Okay, so my ideal suggestion is that if you are employed in any capacity, whether it's permanent, whether it's temporary, you have to put it over there. Don't fear that, okay, they will ask some questions from that area, what should I do? No, don't do that. You have to put it. Understood? And whatever be the job, you be thoroughly prepared in that domain so that if any question is being asked, you will be, prepared to answer it. Okay. It will be asking whether you are self-employed. Okay. Then it will also ask about whether you have previously applied. You can put the year, and if you forget about the roll number, no issue, just put 0 over there. Okay. Okay. So these are the most important information. So from DAFN, okay, the most crucial thing that you have to take care is that make sure that you are entering everything correctly, especially those that is being dropped down or populated. And second, ensure that you are correctly entering your school details, college details, etc. Third, if you are working for some time, if you have done some part-time job, if you have done some internship even while in colleges and all, try to put it over there rather than keeping it blank. Fine. So these were the most important things that you were supposed to take care in DAFN. But this is not alone. More important things are yet to come. Let's see. Let's go to DAF2. Okay. So, what all informations are there in DAF2? In DAF2, most crucial informations are actually provided in DAF2. What all be the information that you are associated with your UPSC preparation, that is actually provided in DAF2. Now, let's see. Okay, again your panel information is brought it over again here. Yeah. Okay. So, earlier you did, you provided information till your graduation. Most of you might have done your post-graduation, right? So, those information could be given over here. Higher educational qualification, you can give about the post-graduation degrees over here. Then, here comes the crucial element that we are going to discuss, or what most of you has been expecting me to talk about. So, this is what actually gives an idea about yourself to the board. So, it talks about 4 elements particularly. First one is prizes, medals and scholarships that you have received. Second is sports or NCC or other activities. And third is leadership position that you have hold while you are in school or college. Then final, your interest or your hobbies. We'll take each and every one and we'll see. Okay. So, the first one is with respect to prizes, medals and scholarship. So, there are different types of people, right? Let's see, there are some people who have been actively pursuing their academic excellence from LKG onwards. So they had lot of academic excellence and all. Normally the Sharma ji ka beta or beti. Okay. Then we have the normal people who have some academic achievements. Then there are some people who think that they don't have any academic achievements. But I never suggest any of you to keep it blank. Don't keep it blank. You will have some or other academic excellence or prizes or medals or scholarship that you can actually bring it over here. It is ideal not to keep it blank, but put something over here. More importantly, there is one thing else I want to take your attention to. Please give particulars at the university, state, national level. So they are asking about university, state and national level. And some people say that, sir, I don't have anything at university, state or national level. So rather than keeping it blank and telling that, sir, I don't have any special achievements at university level and all, you can provide what all achievements that you have over there. That is more ideal than keeping it blank. So let's say, as part of your graduation or post-graduation, you have presented a paper or you have published a paper. So that could come as one of the prizes, medal, scholarship, etc. So you have received some scholarship from the government. It can be brought over here. Okay. And you have been taking part in various quiz competitions or debate competitions or some other major academic competitions. So the academic excellence of that particular student is being evaluated through the prizes, medals, scholarship, etc. Now, if you look at this particular DAF, you will see that she has written A1 in all subjects for All India Senior, plus 2 examination, like A1. Then she has completed her master's degree with full financial grant. Then she has published a thesis on shipboard power systems. Okay. There is one issue with respect to the way in which she has presented. See, ideally, we could actually put 1 dot, 2 dot, like that. Now, I will show you one example also. Rather than just writing and putting comma, it is better that you write 1 dot and write the first achievement, second achievement, third achievement, like that. Now, as I told earlier, she has even actually put the fact that she has actually defended a thesis on that particular area, that's the shipboard power system. So when somebody actually sees this, there is obviously chances of the board actually asking about shipboard power system. That is something that has actually happened over there too. So when it comes to prizes, medals and scholarship, ideally put 1 dot and write your first achievement. And the most important achievement that you consider that you have done during your school, college life should be given as the first one. Then the second. Okay. So the order in which you provide your achievements is also important. The most important achievement needs to be given at the first, provided by this, then the second, then the third, like that. Okay. Don't randomly keep it. So you might have 3 or 4 achievements, and how many achievements that we should keep? The minimum is 2, the maximum is 4. Don't try to overdo it. If you write more than 4, it will be so much congested over there that they will not even actually properly look into each one. So ideally 4, and minimum at least write 2. And if anybody thinks that they have no achievements so far, sit with your mentor, have a discussion and see what all could be actually brought over there as your achievements. Okay? So don't keep it blank. Now second one, sports and NCC. So this is another area where many students actually think that they don't have anything to write or anything to put. See, that is primarily because of most of your students has been focusing so much on academics that you tend to forget one of the most important thing in your life. That is the sports, the games that you should have done or you should have given importance to during your schools and colleges. But even if you are not actually participating in sports and all, we could write something over there. For example, she has been practicing yoga and we put yoga over there. Okay, so yoga is something that many people are actually doing. Then many will think that, okay, then they will ask about so many asanas. But don't worry about that. Rather than keeping it blank, you can keep it yoga and prepare on that. And you can say that you have been doing it for this much period. And you know about the basics of yoga and all. And you could also tell that how it has actually improved yourself. Okay, you don't have to worry too much about they asking about different asana. If you don't know, you can tell that you have been doing it in the basic level only. You are pursuing, or you are hoping to do it, or you are hoping to take it to the next level. Like that, you can tell, and you can move on to the next question. So what I'm saying is that rather than keeping it blank, you can keep something like practicing yoga, or see, most of you people are staying in Rajendra Nagar in Delhi, right? So you people will be walking in the morning to the institute, or walking in the evening back to your hostels and all. So you can write evening walking, or evening jogging, or some people even put going to the gym periodically, calisthenics. Now you might have been actually part of your college cricket team or college football team, etc. You can put it over there. If you could actually be specific over there, that would be good. For example, you were the central defender for your college football team. So, right, in sports, NCC, etc., central defender in college football team. I mean, if you are being specific over there, it will actually narrow down the questions, and more importantly, that will give a feel that you are being truthful over there. I mean, since it is being very specific, rather than telling that okay, I am in college cricket team, or I am in college football team, or similar writing cricket, football, etc. It is better that you give specific over there. Understood? So practicing yoga, evening jogging, or jogging in the evening, or calisthenics, which is something associated with bodybuilding. Okay, most of you might be going to the gym very periodically. Okay, at least you could actually brought it over there. But see, if you have a figure like mine, and you are going to say that you are going to gym actively, no, they are not going to believe it. So don't do such bluffing over there. Make sure that if you are saying that you are going to the gym, and make sure that your body also reflects that. Okay, now let's see. So don't keep it blank. Write some hobbies, write some sports activities that you have been part of. If you are not actively be part of any sports and all, you can write about going to the gym, or practicing yoga, or going for evening walk, or morning strolls, etc., or jogging. All this could actually be brought over here. Understood? Okay. The most important thing is that whatever you are putting it over here, you should be able to defend it. That's the most important thing. So I think that gives an idea about sports, NCC, etc. Now the third one, position of distinction leadership held in school and colleges. Okay, so this particular aspirant has been a teaching assistant while she was doing her master. So she has put it as an achievement, as a position of leadership. Then she was also the mess secretary in her college. See, all these are actually activities that you have been done, right? Now, there might be plenty of technical festivals or other literary festivals as part of your college life. You might have been a coordinator for that. Now, you could actually put it over there. Now, you might be a member of particular club. You could put it. But or you might be a volunteer for some association in your college. You could actually put it over there. But rather than just putting a volunteer or a member, if you could actually identify a position with respect to that, that is good. Or at least write active member of blood donation camp, or active volunteer of blood donation camp. Like that you can put. Okay, rather than just putting like being a volunteer or being a member. Okay, so when it comes to the positions of distinction of leadership held in schools and colleges, you might be leader in the school, you might be head boy in the school, you might have been the house captain, etc. You could actually bring all those positions over here. The most important thing is that you need to actually say that how that particular position, or how you have actually shown elements of leadership while being in that particular position. So some people will even think that, okay, what is the importance of being a secretary? But she could actually beautifully defend that by identifying the crisis they have actually faced during her time, and how she has actually risen up to that occasion. Now, she could actually score brownie points while questions are being asked from that particular perspective. So that is something that you should also be taken care of. While you are actually putting something over there, you should make sure that you are going to explain it to somebody or some board over there, where you say that in that particular position, you have shown elements of leadership. Understood? Okay. Now comes your hobbies and your interest. Okay. See, many people I mean, most of the people will have an actual hobby, right? Having an actual hobby is something very nice. For example, there might be people uh, who are interested in stamp collection, philately. There are people who are interested uh, with the trains and the models of trains, etc. Something known as train fanning. Then there are people who might be actively singing melody songs or singing classical songs. I mean, they might have their own hobbies, right? For all the people who has their hobby, present it beautifully over there. And what about people who don't have hobbies or who think that their hobby is very bland? Okay, don't write very generic hobbies over there, right? Reading or listening or music or cricket. Now, you have to be a bit specific over there. Because being specific actually helps you in two aspects. Again, to narrow down questions, and also that actually shows that you are actually pursuing that. And it also helps that particular person to see that, okay, this particular woman, for example, she says that she reads mythological fiction. So there can be questions from mythology, right? And they could actually see that, okay, whether she has knowledge in mythology, what all mythological fictions she has been reading. Okay, then what she has done is that instead of writing just, she is an ardent reader. So rather than putting just reading, she tries to recollect what all the most common books that she has she has read. And out of that, she has found that the most common work that she has written is about the mythological fictions. And for example, one of my friend who is right now in Tamil Nadu cadre, so his hobby is actually watching movies. So watching movies, simply putting watching movies is not good. So we need to actually narrow it down. What type of movie, what genre of movie that you are watching. So what he did is that he put watching autobiographical movies. So that's actually a good hobby. Because why? Because there aren't too much of autobiography. I mean, there are enough autobiographical movies. You could watch some of the most important autobiographical movies, and there can even be questions from that. Which movie which movie have inspired you, or what is the recent autobiographical movie that you have seen and how it has actually inspired you. I mean, there can be questions like that, and that can actually, I mean, those are areas in which you can actually hit it out of the park. I mean, those are like free hits because you are putting it over there, you are supposed to prepare about it, and if a question comes in that dimension, definitely hit it out of the park. Okay, so for her, it's reading, but reading has been changed to reading mythological fiction. Then she is a good dancer, and she has been practicing dance for some time, so she put Bharatanatyam. Then she is a foodie. I mean, she likes to eat food. So how could eating food could be a hobby? So this is something that we have been, I mean, many people has actually identified as hobby because they like to roam around, go to different places and have food. So instead of just writing it as a food blogger or food vlogger, etc., what she has written is that exploring diverse cuisines. So that means that, so she has traveled to a lot of places, and she identifies that like whenever she goes to a particular place, she tries to eat the local cuisine over there and try to understand its connection with the culture, its connection with the geography, its connection with the I mean, I know how that cuisine has evolved over a period. So she has actually put exploring diverse cuisines. So the idea that you need to think or you need to focus while writing your hobbies or interests is that first thing, write your actual hobby. Write your actual hobby if you have one. If you don't have, just think that what is the most important thing, or what is the most common thing that you do while you are actually, during your break. Now you might be watching a lot of series, you might be watching a lot of YouTube videos, or you might be hearing some particular type of songs. So listening music, you could, instead of saying listening music, you could say the type of the music that you like. You might be a ghazal lover. You could say listening ghazals. Then they could ask questions about Jagjit Singh or Talat Mahmud or any of the ghazal singers, and even you might be asked to sing a song also. See, I have put listening to ghazal as one of my hobby, and in one of my mock interview, they have actually asked me to sing. See, when somebody in the board asks you to sing, they are not going to evaluate your singing ability, right? Whether your notes are correct and all. what they're actually trying to see it over there is that whether you are taking up that initiative. So therefore, whenever such opportunities are actually being brought to you, like if you're asked to sing a song, na, immediately sing it. For example, I have seen a video in which the aspirant was telling that he was asked to, he has written composing rap poetry as a hobby. So on the first interview, I think, he was asked to compose one, and immediately he couldn't at that time. But next time, he has actually prepared it. He has made sure that if they gave an opportunity, he will obviously grab it. So make sure that given an opportunity, you should definitely grab such opportunity. And if you are asked to sing, you can sing. If you are asked to draw something, you draw. Okay, fine. So most importantly, give specific hobbies. Don't give bland hobbies. Or, I mean, bland hobbies in the sense like bland hobbies, or people put like in watching TV or reading novels, or simply putting or reading, or there are people who put music. Music is a hobby, but narrow it down. What type of music? Okay, watching TV is good. Okay, you tell what type of TV programs that you watch. You will see more examples. I will show you some more examples with respect to hobbies, etc. Okay, so this is the most crucial element when it comes to your DAF, and you have to be very careful in preparing or putting all this information over there. Now, if you see further, what you will see is that, okay, this is the cadre preference. It's a very personal thing, so I don't want you to look into this particular cadre preference. And I will show you the cadre preferences for IAS, IPS, and also the service preference, etc. Okay, so with this, we have come to the idea how a DAF actually looks like. So we have seen both DAF 1 and DAF 2, but this time, believe me, like it will be one DAF which will contain all this information. Okay, now some of you might have still some more doubts regarding your like what are the hobbies that we can put. Now I will show you one or two more examples. Okay, fine. So in this one, she has also scored very high marks, I think 194 marks. Okay, and being her first attempt itself. So she has put some summer internship and all over here, and she has put some debate prizes, some quiz prizes, etc. that she has obtained. So what she has done specifically is that she has got prizes for many debates. She has gone prizes for many quizzes. So there are some people who just put like one various prizes in debates, one various prizes in quizzes, rather than what we have done. I mean, what she has done over here is that she has specifically identified a particular debate, which is a very prestigious one, Elihu Yale debate by Indo-American Association. So there can be questions about that particular name, Elihu Yale. Why? Like that. Then again, she has one prize in Gandhi Memorial Quiz. Gandhi is something that you have to study, right? Okay. So she wanted these elements to be there in the DAF so that it will trigger some questions for the for the board members, and that questions will be asked. So it is always better to put some prestigious debates or prestigious quiz with its actual name so that it may trigger some questions rather than putting many prizes for debates, many prizes for quiz, etc. Then she was a volunteer for NSS. Then positions of leadership, she was a brand ambassador for Uber. Then she was secretary. Then she was school head girl, etc. But interestingly, I want you to focus on her hobbies. Many people have put quiz as hobby. And last year, one thing that we have observed is that when people put quiz as hobby, the board tries to tend to shoot many questions, like a rapid fire and all, and try to see how he is actually responding to it. So rather than the knowledge, it is to see his mental alertness, because that is something that you acquire over a period by being part of many quizzes and all. So whether his mental alertness is as strong as a good quizzer has. So that is something that they were actually trying to evaluate. Anyway, rather than she being an ardent quizzer, she is also hosting quizzes. So she put hosting quizzes are her hobby rather than attending quizzes. Then again, she is an ardent leader, but instead of putting reading simply as hobby, she put reading literary fiction. She wanted to narrow it down. Then we need to bring some interesting hobbies. So she brought in tea tasting. And there has been questions from that domain, like what are the steps associated with the tea tasting, what are the different types of tea, like that. So she had experience in it, she has been doing it for some time, and that has actually helped her to answer many questions also. Okay, now another one. Okay, here again, you will see that like this candidate, she's also in service. So she has put, various prices that she has got. For sports, she put at least one idea like swimming. Then she has done some projects at Kudangulam nuclear power plant. So she has put specifically that name so that some questions might come from that. Then interestingly, she used to paint old, she used to take old items like bottles, beer bottles, etc. And she used to paint a bottle art, doing bottle art or creating art from waste. So that is her hobby, creating art from waste. But rather than writing creating art from waste or recycling, etc., what we have done, or craft, etc., what she has done is that she put the word upcycling. So upcycling is that like you take up a waste product and you are creating something out of it. So she introduced a new word. Its actual word is there. So what you have to do is that if you have a particular hobby that you do, research about it and identify a very specific name if possible and try to bring it over there. And if it is very different, then obviously questions might, or that will attract the attention of the board members. So that is what I want to focus, like upcycling, the word upcycling. Then, okay, this is another in which he made a mistake of keeping the Prizes Medal Scholarship as blank, because he believes that he says that he didn't have any prizes, medals or scholarship at university, state or national level. But despite that, he could have actually put something over there. But unless until you are very sure about defending yourself, don't keep it blank. You have to write something over there. Okay. Interestingly, I want you to focus the attention on the interest, his hobbies and interest. So he is an ardent cricket follower. So what he has done is that he has written enjoying test cricket. Okay, so rather than watching cricket, he says that enjoying, that not normal cricket, test cricket. And again, that actually scored over the interview board, because like they were also, some of the board members are also very much interested with respect to the way in which the cricket is going, and they were actually wondering why somebody of his age is actually still following test cricket, not the IPL or T20s, etc. And that has actually created an opportunity for conversation over there too. Okay. Now, let's come to the services. See, there are in total 24 services in last year's DAF. We are supposed to provide our service preferences to all these services. See, out of these 24 services, there are about 5 services which, there are 5 services which are Group B services. Okay, there are 2 All India services in this, and the others are the central services. Okay, I know that most of you know about the Group B services, that is Armed Force Headquarters, Officer Service or the Civil Service, the DANICS and DANIPS, and the Pondicherry Civil Service and the Pondicherry Police Service. Okay. Now, many people ask me, sir, what should be the first option? What should be the second one? At least most of you know about the first 4 or 5 or 6. What about the rest? Okay. See, to tell that one service is good than the other, after the first initial 6 services is very difficult, because it again depends on each person. For example, one person might actually find one particular type of service very much interesting, whereas the other person might not. So, I will give a brief idea about the services, and also will try to categorize the services into groups. And within groups, you can actually identify based on your preferences which might come first or second. The groups actually stand same, but your preferences within groups could actually change. Now let's see the service preferences. So I have actually classified the whole services into 7 categories. Set 1, no doubt, the top 3 services, IAS, IPS and IFS. Like IAS, IFS and IPS are there. Okay. Obviously, IAS is identified as the most important, most revered civil service. And if you ask anybody, that is a service that could actually change your life, the life around the people, and you could do immense service to the society and to yourself also. So it's a most important service. When compared to these three services, in India, if you like to be in India, IAS is the most important service. Then IFS and IPS. There are people who are very much passionate about the policing, or they might come from a police family, or they might come from, or he might be coming from an area where there are a lot of law and order issues are there. And from a small age itself, he has been inspired by many police movies or police roles, etc., that he wanted to be a police officer. Such people could obviously identify IPS as their first option. Then, for all those people who wanted, who likes to travel, who likes to read a lot, who writes to write books and all, who has that literary side to it, IFS is actually a good option. Indian Foreign Service. Okay, it's a good option. Why in the good sense? Like, those services actually provide you a lot of time for exploring the world around you. It also provides a lot of time for your own inspections that actually make you to write, make you to think about yourself. So I have seen like many IFS officers are actually finding time to write books and all. Okay, now to be more critic about these three services, I just gave a brief idea. Like, to be more critic, I don't want to talk about IAS because that is the most relevant, most important service. Okay, all those people who doesn't have any specific preferences for foreign service or IPS, always put IAS as your first option. Done. Second one, who likes power? No, who likes to be in command of a group and who likes to take charge and take control, who likes to have that power. No, those people could actually opt for IPS. And as I told earlier, the people who are interested in foreign services, in representing India, he could be an IFS officer. And again, the initial part of IFS officer is not as glory as you think. You become an ambassador and all much later. Okay, so initially, while you get into an IFS, while you become an IFS officer, after the initial training in Mussoorie, you will be coming to the Sushma Swaraj Institute in Delhi for the Foreign Service, and there, your initial training would be there. Based on the rank or the mark that you have actually, based on the rank, right now they are actually giving it on the basis of rank, and they will actually given the choice of opting languages, and based on the languages they have chosen, they will be going to that particular place and they will be staying in that particular country for 2 to 3 years and to get a thorough understanding about that language. For example, one of my students has chosen Mandarin as his language and he is in Beijing. Another one has chosen Sinhalese and she is in Sri Lanka. So what they do? They actually go there and study the language. They become very thorough in that particular language. And they sit in the office and actually read the newspaper and try to see what all news about India has actually come in their newspapers and how the media and that particular country is perceiving India and issues that India is interested about. So that is what they will be doing initially. But after some time, they will actually get more opportunities to connect with the people and all. And obviously, along with that comes a glamorous life also. But again, you need to make sure that you are the representative of India in a particular place. So you cannot just go there and chill and do whatever you like. You have to be very much responsible also. So that is an equally important part with respect to IFS. The quality of life is said to be much higher when it comes to IFS. Okay. So, all these three services, I think you got it. IRS IT, IRS Customs and Excise, then Indian Audit and Account Service. This would be the second set. Okay. So, within the second set, which one would be the best one? Rather than going for the best, I will tell you the importance of each one, right? IRS IT. See, this is the future service. Okay. This service has been in much demand, but last year there was some development within the services that it is becoming more automated, and thereby that individual focus is actually losing out. But still, that service is a very nice service, and you will have a lot of control and power, and you will also have a relatively peaceful work-life balance when compared with IAS and all. So IRS-IT is a good service, and since India is actually, I mean, the focus of every country in the near future is in the economic side, and obviously, IRS-IT will have its own space. Similar with the customs and excise, but you will be part of the port, the airport. You will also be looking into the narcotics, ED, all those activities. And in IRS Customs and Excise, there is provision for uniform. So, more or less, no, it is a partly uniform service also. When compared with IRS-IT and IRS Customs and Excise, IRS-IT is the same type of job, or more or less the same type of job, whereas a lot of variety is being offered by IRS Customs and Excise. And see, I had friends, and while I was preparing, I had friends who joined IRS-IT and IRS Customs and Excise. And when they two compare each other, now IRS-IT people say that, okay, we are the much important fellows than the Customs and Excise. I mean, that feeling is there. Okay. And obviously, IRS-IT is a most sought out service for both boys and girls. Okay. And many people actually, once they get into IRS-IT and all, they even think about stopping writing examination again. But there is an interesting service over here, that is Indian Audit and Account Service. Audit and Account Service, you will be working under CAG. Okay, you will be the one who is actually trying to audit the government spending and all. So the government accounts will be audited by you. It's a very interesting service. It's one of the services that have one of the least attrition rate. That means less number of people moving out of that particular service. And Indian Audit and Accounts Department is highly revered across the world. India is actually auditing, or Indian auditing team is auditing many international organizations like UN and all. So you could even be part of that. So, but one of the issues is that Indian Audit and Account Service, one of the issues is like if the Public Accounts Committee, who looks into the report by the CAG, is not very strong in that particular state, then their recommendations would more or less, I mean, because since their reports are more of recommendatory nature, it would not be brought in place, or it wouldn't be made effective. But if the PAC is actually strong, the Public Accounts Committee is very strong, CAG report is ardently followed, and you could actually feel a sense of satisfaction in your job, because your findings are actually being taken into account by the Public Accounts Committee, and scrutiny is actually being done. So, after the first three services, you could think about IRS-IT, and you can even put Audit and Account Service even before Customs and Excise. There is no issue. But people who want that variety of the job, and you can go for Customs and Excise, then followed by Audit and Account Service. So these two sets are almost fine. So after that, normally you will see that all the veterans or all people would say that now go to IRTS. And most of the people would be straight away going to IRTS. But I have kept all the railway service below, primarily because of two reasons. One, see, we are not very sure whether these services would be made available for this year DAF, because first thing, the UPC has already, the government has already decided to conduct an examination under UPC itself for Indian Railway Management Service, because they are actually trying to consolidate all the services in railway into two wings. One is the engineering and one is the management. So all these IRTS, IRAS and IRPS, all these are actually going to get merged into one particular service, that IRMS. So to be part of IRTS or IRPS, IRAS, even if it is this year, isn't that suggestible, because we don't know the future of that particular services, because once the IRMS comes now, what is going to happen to this particular service. But other than that, IRTS is identified as the IAS in railway. Okay, most powerful, they are the people who run railway. Okay, IRAS, that's the one who does all the accounting service within railway. And IRPS is bit headache service, not headache, but if you like people management and all, that's very interesting service. But the problem is that like you need to deal with the railway unions and all. So you are the one who will be dealing with the railway unions and all. And it's one of the most powerful union in the world. I mean, in India, and you will see that many times you will be under a lot of pressure, because the IRTS people would be actually forcing you, okay, to ensure that the people are coming to the work even if some problems are there. But you need to actually connect with the union people and get them understand the situation, and make them come to the government terms and all. And so it's being observed that there is a lot of tensions going on with respect to this particular service. But other than that, if you have a people management skill, you like to work with the people, then IRPs is a good service. Okay, so I just told about these services, IRTS, IRAS and IRPS, predominantly because I'm telling that why I'm keeping it down. Because there is high chances that this year those services won't be there, or in the near future those services won't be there, because they are going to get merged into Indian Railway Management Services. Then, now the first 6 services, no? Since IRTS has actually gone down, what are our options? The set 3 consists of services like postal, information, corporate law and defense account services. Let's see each one. Postal service, one of the oldest service. Advantages, you have all, I mean, the structure is there for that particular service. That means, okay, you have proper training facility, you have proper job structure, etc. Another advantage with respect to postal service is one of the chill service. You have a lot of opportunities in that service itself, and there is a lot of opportunity to for interdepartmental exchange. You can go for deputation to different departments, etc. So, and within postal itself, they are actually trying to innovate. Many people actually think that what is the purpose of having a postal service in this present time? Because like it is the time of internet. What is, who is going to write letters now? But the postal service itself is actually trying to reinvent itself, and they're actually trying to find relevance in the present times. And since it's an old service, the service is not going to end as such. Since it's being an old bureaucratic service, the service itself will try to protect it, and it is trying to reinvent itself so that it is actually finding new avenues also. Most importantly, you will get, there is high chances for you to get leave for preparing again. There is high chances for you to get EOL. There is not much restriction, and the working is also much easier. Many people put IPOs high predominantly because, like, if they end up in that particular service and they want to prepare again, that actually provides a lot of opportunity for that. Postal services, even though many people think that that's an old services, it has its perks. Okay, so that is one in the set 3. Next one in the set 3. I'm not saying that we should put it one. Okay, so the next one is Indian Information Service. See, at times it is also called as Indian Individual Service because, see, this service is not going to take you anywhere, but with the service you can go to anywhere. Have you understood? The service is not going to take you anywhere means, okay, the service as such is not going to get you to good positions and all, but with the services, because it is one of the important services, okay, you will be working in most of the departments. There is a lot of opportunity for interdepartmental exchange. Like Indian Information Service has a lot of potential in the future also. But since, as I told earlier, it's in the Indian Individual Service. That means if you put effort, if you are ready to take that extra effort, the service will take you to higher positions. But if you think that, okay, let the service take me to where I want to, that's not going to happen in this particular service. It's a good service. Then you will be associated with the Doordarshan, Prasar Bharati, all those positions, and you will also be associating with different departments, okay, as their public representatives. Then we have the Corporate Law Service. Okay, see, Corporate Law Services is actually introduced predominantly to give effect to the Companies Act. It's a new service. Many people say that since it's a new service, it's not ideal to keep it at the top. But after talking with some of my seniors and some of my students also who got into service, it has a lot of opportunities, potentials. You are given a good position, and by being part of the implementation process of the Companies Act, you are given a lot of power in that domain. In that particular area, you are given a lot of power at the very early stage itself. It's an upcoming services. Again, the problem is that proper structure isn't available. Okay. Having all services would have a bureaucratic structure that will actually ensure that you are getting the promotions and all the promotions at the right times and all. But for the new services, it is yet to happen. That is not as smooth as the old services and all. Again, defense account service, lot of opportunities are there, and there is a lot of power within that particular service. The problem normally associated with the defense account service as well as the defense estate service is the fact that you would be working under military. Then defense estate service, now you will be associated in certain cantonment areas, and you will be in charge of that cantonment areas. That means you will be like the administrator of that particular cantonment area, CEO of that cantonment area. But the opportunity to grow is much less, because even after many years, now you will be in a particular position itself. You will only be moving from a smaller cantonment to a larger cantonment. Okay, but the quality of the life in cantonments are much good. So people normally think that okay, those are services that could actually have a very relaxed, because the living conditions are good. Then most of the times there are a lot of opportunities within that cantonment itself. There will be proper schooling, hospitals, and all those facilities will also be there. So that is why we identify defense estate service also as a good service. So if you look at the set 3, you will see the postal is there, information is there, corporate law is there, defense account service is there. And among the account services, the defense account service is the best account service. Set 4 will consist of these 3: civil accounts, defense estate, and ITS. I just talked about the defense estate service, right? Civil account service, you will be posted in Delhi throughout your career, no other places. The problem is like being in Delhi, even if you are a government employee, you will not have proper quarters and all, because there is always a dearth of quarters and other facilities in and around Delhi. So you will be posted in Delhi. If you have interest in accounts and you don't want to roam around, this is a good service. Then trade service, again an upcoming service. Many people say that there are a lot of opportunity for that particular service, yet to identify. The primary objective of the trade service is to implement the trade policies of the government, looking into WTO objectives and whether we are following it, conducting different job fairs, with respect to trade and all. So again, upcoming service, people say that there is scope, but it's yet to see that potential. Okay, so I talked about the railway services, and let's hope that it is not there this time. Then comes the ordnance factory services, PTAS. The name of the PTAS has been changed to the communication account services. It is said to officially come. It is going to be Indian Communication Account Services. Then we have the RPF. The government is also planning to rename RPF also. Okay, let's see. Ordnance factory is the place where we make guns, bullets, and different equipment that is actually, different materials that is actually required for the military. So most of the time, these factories would actually be in remote areas, not in primary locations and all. So the location where some difficulty might be there, from what I have heard from my friends and batchmates and my students. But other than that, your activity would be more or less of an administration within that aspect. Within that ordnance factory, you would be more or less an administrator over there. The type of the job is that of an administrator. Again, IPTAS, or whether it is going to be the communication account service, it's again an account service only. Then RPF is the Railway Protection Force, whose primary objective is to ensure that the railways, there is no terrorist attack, there is no Naxal attack, etc., with respect to the functioning of railways and all. Then comes the Group B services, DANIX, PCS, DANIPS, PPS, and AFHQ. See, Group B services are always Group B services, but DANIX as well as Pondicherry Civil Service, both these are administrative services. If you are very much passionate about administrative service and you don't worry about the power struggles within offices and all, this is something that you could actually opt and keep it higher. But the problem is that, see, you will be reporting to somebody in IAS, much junior to you, and he might be 8 years junior to you, and still he will be your boss. But despite that fact, and despite the fact that it is only Group B services, the job profile of that service is similar to that of an administrator. Okay, so some people see it from that perspective and keep DANIX as well as PCS high. Okay, so this is with respect. Then we have, this is the police services with respect to DANIPS and Pondicherry. Then finally we have the AFHQ, which is looking into the Armed Force Headquarters Civil Services. All the civilian activities associated with the Armed Force Headquarters would be done by AFHQ, and it is more or less posted in Delhi. There is less chances of they being moving out of Delhi. The thing is that, like, I have many friends who is part of AFHQ, but it is very difficult to actually contact them and all, because like they don't normally even use a smartphone in their office and all. They are actually using the old Nokia wala phones and all, because there is a lot of secrecy associated with their functions and all. So this is a brief idea about the service. You can go through net and study about all the services and see which one is suitable to your nature. And based on that, you keep this order: set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4, set 5, set 6, and within the sets you can actually change it. So for example, somebody who is more interested in movies, who is more interested in being part of Doordarshan or Prasar Bharati, etc., can keep Indian Information Service much ahead within this set 3. So based upon your nature, arrange within sets, try to keep this set 1, set 1 to 7 there itself, and within the sets you can make the changes. That would be an ideal thing to do. Okay, now comes the cadre preferences. So most of you know the cadre policy, and I don't want to elaborately go into that. Just I will give that idea. Earlier, the cadre policy was like, you give the cadre the order, they follow that particular order. Now they have introduced the zones. So zone 1 will have Aghmud, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Rajasthan, Haryana. Jammu and Kashmir was also there, and it will move to Aghmud. Then Zone 2, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha. Zone 3, Gujarat, Maharashtra, MP, Chhattisgarh. Zone 4, West Bengal and the northeastern state. Zone 5 would be the southern states. Okay, how it will move, I will say. First of all, you need to prioritize the zones. So, okay, let's say, since, my home state or my domicile is Kerala, I will try to identify Kerala as the first. So, my first zone would be this. Okay, sorry. Okay, so zone 5 is my first zone. Then zone 3 is my second zone. Then third zone, fourth zone, and fifth zone. See, this is entirely with respect to mine. Why? First one, why I consider zone 5 as my first zone? Because I am from Kerala, I need to consider it as my first option, my home state. So I need to give that particular zone as the first zone. If I am not at all interested in working in Kerala, I can give any zones that I want to. Okay. Now within zone 5, I need to identify which is my first option. Let's say I give Kerala as the first one, which is not normally given by many people who are coming outside Kerala, from north and all. People normally don't prefer Kerala that much. Okay, then, now my second zone is zone 3, right? In zone 3, my first preference would be, let's say, Maharashtra, obviously Maharashtra. Then, in this one, it would be Rajasthan. Then, in UP, Bihar, it would be UP. And it would be, let's say, West Bengal. And when it comes to zone 5 again, my second preference would be, let's say I give Telangana as my second option. I will show you how it moves. Zone 5 is my first one. Do you think that after considering Kerala, it will go to Telangana? No. After considering Kerala, it will move to my second zone, that is zone 3, and it will take the first option, that is Maharashtra. They will see if it can be allocated. Then it will move to my third option and see my first preference, that is Rajasthan, and they will try to allocate that. So first, they will give the first preferences in each zone, and they will try to allocate it. Then it will move to the second preferences of each zone. So like that the cycle goes on, and we will be allocated the different services. Different cadres. Now people normally ask, sir, which is the best cadre? So what cadre we should actually put? First thing that you need to understand that the cadre would be different for different people because of their geographical location itself. Another thing that we need to make sure that the cadre will be different for IAS as well as IPS. And I will give you the most important things that you should consider while identifying the cadre. And I will say some of the cadre which are good. Okay, that is something that like you could actually use it while you are actually preparing it. So let's consider for IAS first. Okay, see for IAS, Zone 3, which contains Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, is a good zone. It had two good states, Maharashtra and Gujarat. Administratively, they are both very good, very prominent states. You could actually give that in the top. So let's say that you are from Maharashtra, or you are from, let's say Bihar, or you are from Himachal. Then give that particular zone the first zone. Then only it will be considered as your domicile state. Okay, let's say you are from Himachal. So obviously zone 1 would be your first preference, like that. So I will try to identify the preferences within each zone. Okay, so let's see. Zone 1, Rajasthan is a good state. Okay, it can be followed by Haryana or Himachal. Okay, followed by Punjab, Uttarakhand. And again, now the question comes whether we should put Aghmut or not. Earlier, we used to keep Aghmut at the top. Now, since it contains all the union territory, J&K would also be part of it. And if you have no issue or no comms, working in Aghmut is good. So it could be even considered putting before Punjab itself. So let's say this would be 4 and 5. And this would turn out to be my 6. Okay, so this would be in the first zone. So second zone, Odisha is good, but big state, lot of opportunities. UP, Bihar is good. Odisha, Jharkhand. Obviously Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. Then in zone 4, some people used to do a technique. If they don't want that particular zone, they will actually keep Sikkim as their first option. Why? Because there is less chances, because only hardly 1 or 2 seats will be made available in Sikkim. And there is no chances that you will actually be getting it. So in order to skip that particular zone, many people actually give Sikkim as their first option. Other than that, the best state among this would be obviously West Bengal. Okay, so why Sikkim is given first priority? It's only to bypass that particular zone in the first iteration. But it is up to you people, because there can be chances that you end up in Sikkim also. The second one, then you can keep West Bengal, or else you can actually keep West Bengal. Then Assam Meghalaya is good, Tripura is good, followed by Manipur and Nagaland. Zone 5, if you are from Kerala, obviously you put it as the first option. But Kerala, the problem is that the political interference is said to be a bit high. See, rather than the political interference, see, the respect that a civil servant that actually get in the north is not actually seen when it comes to the southern states. It is not that difficult state to work, but people believe that there is a lot of political interference are there. But when I talked with many people who are in Kerala, they are actually content in that particular state. Anyway, let's say in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, okay, you can actually give, come on. Okay, now this would be something that you could actually give for IAS. What would happen when it comes to IPS? See, when it comes to IPS, you need to consider an idea, that is the commissionerate system. In a commissionerate system, it is a city-based system. There are more than 50 states where commissionerate has actually been brought in. For example, in Maharashtra is the state that has maximum number of cities with commissionerate system. In commissionerate system, the one who is in charge of that commissionerate has lots of power. So people who opt for IPS, they actually keep this thing in their mind while they are opting for the commissionerate system. While they are opting for the cadre within IPS. Okay, so, and again when it comes to IPS, more or less the idea follows, but you could actually keep the change or keep the idea of commercial system in your mind while giving the cadre for that. And again, within this zone, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, you first opt for your home zone. Other than that, if you are asking me to judge it, I would go for zone 1 to have the first one, followed by again, this is purely my personal choice. I have given zone 3 as my first because I want to be part of Maharashtra and Gujarat, which has very good administrative systems. Or else I would go to Rajasthan, which is again a good state. And again, there is a lot of opportunity in Himachal, Akhmut, etc. Then UP, Bihar again provides a lot of opportunity for an administrator to work. Then I would be part of zone 2. Then when it comes to zone 4, zone 5, it again depends upon whether you want to go to the south or the northeast. Depending upon your choice, you can actually interchange that also. Okay, so this gives an idea about the cadre preferences. Okay, see again, while you are preparing the cadre preference, don't just copy someone else's cadre preferences. You keep the idea that where you want to work. Do you want to work in your home state? Yes. Then that would be going to be your first zone. Then within that zone, obviously your domicile state would be the first option. Then which one else you should opt for? Right? So you always think from the perspective of that you are getting a good rank and you are not missing out a good cadre because of the fact that you haven't properly filled the cadre. Okay. So keep this thing in your mind. You could consider this as a reference and you can talk with your seniors and see your friends might be working in somewhere, and based on that you can also make your own evaluation and give it. Okay, so based on that you give the cadre preference. For IPs also more or less similar, but always consider the idea of commissionerate system. Okay. So with this, So just to consolidate the whole idea, see, DAF is something that you have to be very careful while preparing. And each one's DAF is going to be different from another person. So don't try to copy from other person or copy from some seniors has done or copy something that the topper has actually done. Your DAF has to be your DAF. Okay. Second thing, prepare extensively on the DAF. Make sure, even before submitting the DAF, make sure that you are putting the right words for your hobbies. You are actually putting the best of yourself in that paper. Understand? You might have lots of academic achievements. Identify the most important ones to be put over there. Make sure that none of the columns are kept blank, especially when it comes to the achievements, the sports, the leadership positions, as well as the hobbies. And keep very interesting contents over there so that there will be questions arise from there. Once you are done with the DAF, prepare extensively on it. Okay, we will be meeting in the future. Once your results are out, we will be having detailed DAF analysis. Based on that, you will be preparing a set of questions. And further, for your DAF analysis also, what you have to do is that keep an Excel sheet where you can enter the questions based on the DAF. You will have some DAF analysis with us. Once the DAF analysis is done, you can actually identify about more than 100 questions from your DAF alone. So put it down. Then you can attend different mock interviews, you can attend one-on-ones, you can do a lot of peer mocks, etc. Based on that, more questions will be coming. You can add on that to your Excel sheets and make sure that you have sufficient number of questions available and you are thoroughly preparing in all those. This is a very crucial phase. I hope that everyone will be utilizing the best that we provide and ensure that you are excelling in interview. Let's hope to see all of you in service in the near future. Thank you.